Welcome to JonGetsGames. Today I'll be reviewing Skull. This is a bluffing game akin to Liar's Dice, where each player has a small amount of information that they know, but they need to make more and more grandiose statements about the overall table state until it just becomes too much and there's only one person left standing. There are some definite differences to this game from Liar's Dice. I will first show you how the game plays, and then I'm going to jump into my review. Here's the starting setup for a 4-player game of Skull. Each player grabs one of these square tiles as well as these 4 coasters. Each set of coasters has 3 coasters with the same flower symbol on it, and then 1 with an awesome skull on it. At the beginning of every round, each player simultaneously selects one of the coasters that they have left, and they put it face down on their tile. And now starting with the first player, which is this pink-orange player down here, they either put one of their remaining coasters down, which right now we see is 2 flowers and a skull, or they can immediately stop and challenge. So for instance, this player may take another one of these roses, put it face down here, and that ends their turn. It would now be the blue player's turn, because we go clockwise. They could once again either put one coaster down, or they can start a challenge. So let's say they put this coaster down here, and that would now make it the green player's turn. They could put a coaster down or challenge, but let's say that they challenge. Challenges are pretty easy. The player simply states a number, and that is the number of coasters they think they can flip over without revealing a skull. You always must flip the coasters in front of you, however, so it's going to dictate maybe what you know you've put down in front of you. So the green player might, for instance, say 2 as a challenge number at this moment. There are currently 6 coasters in play, because both green and red only have 1, and they're essentially saying they can flip over 2 of these coasters without revealing a skull. But again, they have to flip this one over first, but they do know what this is. So now it's the red player's turn, and since the green player challenged, nobody can add new coasters to the play area. All you can do is either increase the challenge number or pass. For instance, the red player may say 3, which would then come back to the orange-pink player. Now, they know that they put 2 flowers down, and since you have to pick yours first, well, them saying 4, that just means they look at these 2 which they know, and they have to guess on 2 others. So the pink player will say 4 as a challenge. At this point, the blue player would probably pass, because in order to challenge again, they'd have to say 5, and there's only 6 coasters out. So they would pass, the green player would pass, and now the red player passes. It's back down to the pink player. They're the only ones who haven't passed, which means the challenge stands, and they now have to go through with it. And now the pink player must reveal 4 coasters without showing a skull in order to win this challenge. Well, you must start with your own, as I said, so they reveal both of those. They're flowers, that's easy. Now they have to reveal 2 more. They might look over and see that blue put 2 down. They flip the top one from blue, and they say, okay, I only need 1 more tile to be not a skull in order for me to win this round. So they pick and choose. They say, well, the red player did up the ante, so let's try his. They flip it over, and it's a flower. So that means that the pink player has now successfully gone through this challenge. There's 4 coasters without skulls. So now these all get tidied back into players' hands, and the pink player would flip their sheet over to the black side to show that they've won 1 challenge. But let's rewind time just a little bit to see how this actually could have ended up. So the pink player would reveal these 2. They just need to reveal 2 more. They look over to the green player, they flip this over, and bam, it's the skull that the green player played. Now, they challenged for 4 coasters, but the moment you hit a skull, you stop. So you're not going to reveal either one of these, and the pink player now fails the challenge. At this point, the pink player gets all 4 or all of their remaining coasters. They shuffle them up nicely, and they say to the green player, because the green player's skull is the one that broke them, pick one of these randomly. They might take this one. That goes into the middle of the table. The pink-orangish player here no longer has access to that coaster. They keep playing as normal, but now they only have 3 coasters, and it looks like, oh, they got lucky. They got to keep their skull, but they might have lost their skull and were only playing with flowers at that point, in which case they try to hide that fact from their opponents. Then everybody takes all their coasters back, and we begin a new round, and the person who was the challenger of the last round starts the round again. In this case, it would be pink because they did the challenge. So everybody would then take a coaster, put it face down in front of them, and keep going. So now let's jump back to the parallel universe where the pink player was successful in their first challenge. They flip their tile over to this black side to show that they were successful. And this is important because when you have your second successful challenge, you win the game immediately. So everybody knows the pink player is 1 success from victory. The only other way you can win the game is if you are the last one standing. Everybody else has lost all of their coasters into the middle. If you have at least 1, then you also are the winner. Alright, so now let's begin the review of Skull, and let's start with the positive points. The first of these has to do with the fact that even as you are losing the game more and more by getting called out and losing coasters to the middle, you still have a pretty good shot at winning the game. I'm directly comparing it to Liar's Dice right now because the only way you win in Liar's Dice is being the last one standing. So it always comes down until everybody else gets eliminated. But in Skull, you might be losing coasters and knowing less and less information, but you only have to win twice. And there have been a couple times where I've seen the person who wins the game has like 1 or 2 coasters left, but they make the right bet at the right time, and they're able to guess the correct situation. There's definitely a bit of luck and randomness that comes into play there, but there's also it's just great knowing that even though you were almost out, you might have 1 coaster left, you could still win the game. If you haven't won any yet, it's going to be a low probability, but I just really like that. And the other aspect to this that I like is that the game doesn't go on forever because you don't have to wait for everybody else to get eliminated. Sure, elimination knocks people out and maybe speeds the game up a little bit, but ultimately you might have somebody win on the second turn of the game based on how they bid. They just might win twice. So I really love that kind of innovation on this generalized bluffing structure that I really liked in Liar's Dice already. It's a lot better in Skull. Positive number 2 is pretty simple. I just love the art in this game. The overall aesthetic that they have going on is very cohesive and it definitely works. And every time I brought this game out and put it out on the table and handed everybody their coasters, pretty much all of them are exclaiming about how awesome it looks. And the first time they see their skull when they're flipping through the coasters, like, oh, whoa, this one looks awesome. Because it all does look awesome. It's just a really great package. The only tiny issue I have is that not all of the coasters seem to directly color match the square tile that you have in front of you that counts points, but that's a really minor thing. And those tiles look great as well. So I just think as a general package, it is a beautiful game, and that definitely adds to the overall gaming experience. So now let's shift into the neutral points, and the first of these has to do with the teach of this game. Now, in general, bluffing games are very simple to teach. In fact, they're obviously designed to be played like in a bar where everybody's already somewhat intoxicated. Liar's Dice is definitely one of those situations where you can explain the whole game in about 20 seconds. When it comes to Skull, almost every time I've taught it to new players, I've kind of explained the rules, and I've gotten a bunch of blank looks where people like don't quite get it, and I say, you know what, just put your coasters down, let's just do a full turn. Once you finish even that first turn, you're gonna get it, and this is why this is kind of a neutral thing and not a negative, because everybody does get it, especially after the second turn. Then everybody's locked in, they know exactly what they need to do. But it does feel a touch convoluted that first time you're trying to get people into the game, but fortunately you can do that quickly enough that people are able to get over that hump. This is more of a little warning to you as you're trying to teach the game the first time yourself. You might get a bunch of blank stares, but just muscle through, they'll figure it out pretty quickly. And neutral number 2 has to do with something that honestly might just be a groupthink with my friends, but I've noticed that there's really nothing stopping people from immediately challenging the moment that comes around to them. In fact, I've seen this happen many times. In fact, more than half the time we start a new round, nobody is going to even add a second coaster because people just immediately start saying numbers and getting that challenge going, which means the challenge numbers for us are often quite low. Like, you will get called out at 4 or 5, whereas if it went a round or two where people are putting coasters down, there might be like 15 coasters out there, and it would be a little bit more granular. Like, it'd be, you know, oh, do I go to 8 or 9? I'm not sure. It seems like in our games, the bluff almost never gets past 6 because there are rarely more than 8 or so coasters that are out. And I kind of wish, even though I already mentioned that it seems like there's several more things going on in this game than Liar's Dice might have, I wish there was some tiny little mechanic added in there to not cause that to happen every time. I'm not sure what the solution to that is, and this does not hurt the overall game, but there are many times where we'll start the round and someone maybe puts one coaster down and then someone starts the challenge, and I'm just in my head thinking, put the coasters down, let's put some more stuff out there, let's get a little bit more information, a little more craziness going on than almost every round being, at what point do I stop, between 3 or 6? So that is definitely a groupthink situation for us, but it might be something that you might end up seeing as well. And here's the point where I would discuss some negative points to the game, but I haven't been able to come up with any of them. The only issues I possibly have with this game, I already explained as neutral points because they don't really drag the game down. They're not really problems. They're just tiny little things that get to me, so let's move on. The replayability in Skull, to me, is quite large, and I think that's because I just straight up really enjoy playing it. It's a very simple game. You're going to be playing the exact same game every time you play. There's nothing hidden in the box. There's no random assortments of shuffles. Everything is out. Really what you're doing is playing the people around the table with a couple pieces of cardboard that you have in front of you that facilitate that medium. So playing it with different people is definitely going to shake up the overall experience, but I've honestly found playing with many of the same people over and over again that has still just been really fun. And so when you think about replayability, the idea is at what point have you played it so many times that it's not fun anymore? And I played Skull, I think about 6 times now, but I've played Liar's Dice like 20 or 30 times. And to me, Skull pretty much completely replaces Liar's Dice, and I still sometimes want to play Liar's Dice. So looking at these simple bluffing games, I see it having a very long future. I see myself having it for a very, very long time and playing it somewhat sporadically, just going forward through the years. I think it's quite high for me. But if you are not into this kind of bluffing game, you're going to get a replayability of 1 because you're just going to say, well, there's nothing new that's coming out in the second game. You have to really enjoy what you see that first game in order to really even play the game a second time. Alright, now let's discuss the player counts that Skull plays. The box says it plays 3 to 6 players, and I think it's a pretty smooth sliding scale from best to worst is 6 to 3. I haven't actually played it 3 players. I think it probably plays fine in that situation, but the more players you can get into this game, the better. I've mostly played it 6 players. I played a couple 5-player games, maybe a 4-player game, I'm not sure, but I just think the more people you have, the more fun this game is going to be. The biggest detractor to a game like Liar's Dice, which I've mentioned many times, is that it could drag on too long because the only way you win is by being the last one standing. This one mitigates that by allowing someone to win by just getting 2 of their challenges successfully through. So I say, throw more people at it. I would play this game with 8 or 10 people if it had the components to do it. Well, 10 might be a little much, but I think you get the idea. This game facilitates lots of people being engaged all the time very well, and so I think 6 plays best. If you only have 3 people, give it a shot, but somebody else comes in, I would definitely try to get that player count as high as you can. In conclusion, I've really enjoyed playing Skull, and it's not just me. Pretty much everyone I've introduced this game to has really enjoyed it. It's been requested many times since I started teaching it to my group, and I think that it's just a really fun package. It mixes that great bluffing aspect, which is different from lying. If you know my taste very well, you'll know that I kind of hate lying in games, but bluffing is different because you don't know for sure that the number you're saying is wrong or not. And you might say a number that you're pretty sure is wrong, trying to lead people into going even higher and get themselves in trouble, but ultimately, you don't actually know that number, that 6 or 8 that you might have just said, it could be legal. It just would be hard to get through. So I just really enjoy that. Also, this game is like raucous fun. It's loud, laughing kind of fun. There have been a couple times where we've been asked to quiet down just a little bit because other people playing games in the other room are trying to concentrate on their Euro cube pusher, and we are just laughing like crazy. You know, every time a skull gets flipped over when you are doing a challenge, everybody just bursts out laughing, and it seems like for some odd reason, skulls usually get flipped on that last number. Like if somebody bid 6, the 6th one's going to be a skull. They bid 3, that 3rd one's going to be a skull. I'm sure that's not the case, but it feels like it, and that just adds this extra tension that's just wonderful. We have had tons of fun playing Skull. I could not recommend this game enough. As I mentioned in the replayability bit, I think I'm going to be keeping this one for a long time, maybe forever. We'll see how that goes, but I could not recommend this enough. If you'd like to see more in-depth board game reviews like this one, as well as full game playthroughs and vlogs, please subscribe to my channel. Also, you can directly support the channel at patreon.com/JonGetsGames. Thanks for watching.